Hello, Kay. Well, we're expecting 17 hostages who have been released from Gaza. There is now a total of 23 who have been freed. Many of them have been treated at a medical centre in Tel Aviv. They've all been undergoing checks for 48 hours. Some of their families are gathered here in Bangkok. We've just spoken to one woman who said that, in fact, her son wasn't on the initial hostage list until she got a call from the Thai embassy in Tel Aviv to say that, in fact, her son, that she has been so desperately waiting to hear from, will be among those returning here. So a huge relief for her and for the many, mostly from northeastern Thailand here. Many come from farming communities, and that is what took them to Israel in the first place. There are around 30,000 Thais, Kay, that were working in Israel, largely in the agricultural sector. Around 5,000 were on the border with Gaza, and that's where they found themselves on the attacks of October the 7th. Kay, Thais are the largest group of victims from the attacks by Hamas on the 7th and the largest number of hostages next to Israelis. So they have felt this conflict very deeply. But today, a moment of joy, news that they have been waiting so long for. I am told they are going to be walking out any minute now. They've been having to go through various checks. They are with the foreign minister of Thailand, who's been welcoming them. He saw some of those freed from Gaza. There were emotional scenes there. He's had an opportunity to hear some of their stories. We are expecting to hear perhaps from 2 hostages, or at least representatives of the hostages, we're told. Very little, I think, has been said officially so far, but this is a moment perhaps for them to share an overwhelming experience.
OK, Cordelia, thanks. Staying on these pictures as we bring in Alistair, who's standing by in Jerusalem for us this morning. We know that the ceasefire, the pause, whatever you want to call it, is continuing for another 24 hours. So more Israeli hostages can be released. But that went right down to the wire this morning, didn't it, Alistair? Tell us more.
Yeah, it was about 3 minutes to 7 a.m. in the morning here when it was announced that the ceasefire, the extension of the ceasefire, I should say, had been agreed. So it literally went very, very close to the ceasefire not being extended. So close, in fact, that Al-Qassam Brigade, which is the armed wing of Hamas, had told their forces to be on alert and be ready to continue the fighting. But an agreement was found. As for why there was a disagreement and it was left so late, it hasn't been made entirely clear, but I think there was a discrepancy over the list that Hamas had passed on to the Israeli government for the hostages to be let out tonight, and the Israeli government had an issue with it, but that issue was ultimately resolved. So we have another 24 hours for more hostages to be released this evening. And in return, Israel will release Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails. Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, is in Jerusalem now. He'll be meeting with senior members of the Israeli government and the Israeli President Isaac Herzog, and we will see whether or not that produces any results, because the Americans are very keen that the pause, the ceasefire, the truce, whatever you want to call it, is extended for as long as possible so that as many hostages can be brought out.
And what about news of the youngest hostage, that little man, just 10 months old? We've heard what Hamas has said about him, his bigger brother and his mother. Has that been independently confirmed, verified by the Israeli government?
No, it hasn't. We're talking about Shiri Bibas and her 2 sons, Ariel, who's 4, and Kafir, who is now 10 months old, 10 and a half months old. He was 9 months when he was taken hostage. He is the youngest of everybody who was taken hostage. Yesterday, Hamas have claimed that they were killed in the fighting, in an Israeli airstrike. The Israeli military have said they are aware of this, they are investigating it, they have notified the family. But Hamas have made claims before that hostages had been killed in the fighting, only for those hostages to then be released alive and well over the recent past days. So we cannot take these claims as being fact. And of course, the family, who I know because I've spent some time with them, completely distraught by this news, are also at the same time hoping that it is false news and that they are still alive and will be released soon.
OK, thank you. Back to Cordelia. Cordelia, it does look now as though members of the press coming through. That would suggest that the Thai hostages we'll see in just a moment. In fact, I think they're probably here now.
That's right, Kay. You are just seeing the arrival of the Foreign Minister of Thailand. He has been in Tel Aviv meeting with the hostages. He was there as they crossed the border, and you can see now the faces of some of those who have spent weeks in captivity. We know very little about what they have endured, about the circumstances that they were confronted with, but we know they will have gone through some horrifying moments. They were there on October the 7th when Hamas opened fire, many working on the border there in farming communities, and you can see here the rush of people trying to speak with them. I think this is a very delicate moment, Kay, one that requires a great deal of sensitivity, because these people have been through the most unexpected, extraordinary circumstances. I think the government is keen to celebrate the success of getting them returned. We know that they have been working with the Qataris, with the Egyptians, with the Turkish and the Iranians. I spoke to one man key in the hostage negotiation team who said that Iran was the critical player in all this. It has Thailand a sizable Thai Muslim minority, and they said they were able to really cast themselves as ordinary people caught up in a conflict they had no involvement in. And here you can just see behind me, Kay, this extraordinary bank of cameras as we wait to hear from the Foreign Minister and perhaps even some of those hostages. I've just spoken to a mother of one man. She has been waiting for weeks to find out, to hear some news of her son. He was not on the official list, and yet she was told yesterday he would be returning home. He's on that flight. Many gathered on the edges here, trying to hear what everyone has to say. And from here, we expect them to go to northeastern Thailand, where most of them are from, so they can finally have that embrace from their families that they have yearned so long for.
OK. We just saw the images, again, Cordelia, of those that have just arrived. They looked relaxed. They looked calm. They were supported by Thai officials, looking at these images of them now, and perhaps a little bit bewildered, as you were saying, at the amount of interest in their plight. Let's remember that they were, many of them, kept underground for something like 50 days. Lots of these young men had been working in the south of Israel, agricultural workers. They have now finally been freed as part of these hostage negotiations. Cordelia was telling us a little bit earlier on that many of them do want to return despite what has happened to them, not least because they are the main breadwinners for their families in Thailand. I'm not sure if Cordelia is still with us, but Cordelia, will we hear from any of them? Will we hear from their representatives about what's happened to them?
Yes, Kay, we are told that we will be hearing at least from 2 representatives. I'm just going to crouch down, as in fact they're just here, the Foreign Minister about to address the press. We can see what appears to be one hostage alongside him. They have had an opportunity to speak with one another. Many of them were taken from farms. We heard of people running in horror as they got separated from their friends. So many of them haven't been reunited. Only in the last couple of days, we know 4 Thai citizens were released late last night, 23 now in total. As I understand it, there were 17 on this flight. And we're just seeing some address the audience, the huge number of press here. I don't know if Duncan, my cameraman, can just give you a sense of the intrigue, both here domestically and across the world. This has been an agonising 6 weeks for so many. There is a huge connection between Thailand and Israel. Lots of people went to Israel for work, to get income for their families. I spoke to a couple of families who said they earned 5 or 6 times what they would here in Thailand, and so they left their families in the northeast to go to this border area with Gaza, and many have been working there for years. There's an interesting dynamic at play. Many who have returned, who confronted that danger and managed to get back, actually want to return to Israel, okay, because they need that money for their family. But I think the immediate sense now is this is just an opportunity for those free to reconnect with their terrified families, because they've got very little information. There hasn't been a TikTok about the situation that they were facing there. Some say they've heard no news for weeks. So tonight will be a really momentous occasion for so many. And I think we're just going to hear an English translation of what we're hearing now.
Nationals who were just recently released, how he's feeling, and if he's had contact with his friends back in Israel. The Thai national responded that he has not had contact with the rest who are still in Israel, but he's absolutely thrilled and happy to be home and to be seeing his family soon. The Prime Minister then...
OK, if you're just tuning our way, Thai hostages freed by Hamas arriving back in Hong Kong, many of them, Bangkok, forgive me, many of them having spent 50 days underground. Thankful to be back home with their families, but as Cordelia was suggesting, many of them, because of the sort of money that they might be able to receive by working in the agricultural field in southern Israel, keen to return when they can. But for now, a bit of respite, a bit of time to spend with their families, a bit of relief that they are some of the lucky ones.